What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Ad Podcast. Today, we have an awesome guest for you guys. Jimmy Hutcheson is one of my oldest friends in the industry. We've known each other since I was in my 20s. He's a fraternity brother of mine in Sigma Chi. He's a media entrepreneur and executive known for leading iconic digital media ventures. He's currently the CEO of Spin Magazine, and he's also the CEO of Next Management Media Partners, a media and tech investment firm in LA. Jimmy founded and grew Hutch Media, a digital publishing company that was acquired in 2015 by the founders of Maker Studios. And he's partnered with major industry leaders on digital media, syndication, and revenue strategy. Across his career, he's built and scaled media businesses and led strategic growth initiatives, forged partnerships with brands like Condé Nast, AOL, Scripps Networks. And he's also a frequent speaker on the topic of media strategy and digital transformation. Jimmy Hutcheson, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan, for having me. It's great to be on. I've been watching your podcast for several years, and man, it's cool to be asked. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Well, I was excited when you and I connected after seeing each other at a Thursday nights recently, and a lot of the guests that I talk to, I'm going on cold with them. We've never met before we hit the camera. So it's always fun to have somebody that I have some history and chemistry with. But for those who don't know you as well as I do, why don't you tell me a little bit about where you grew up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you get into the industry? I love to start with people's origin stories, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Yeah, no, great. Really fun origin story. Moved from Missouri to Malibu. Grew up in Missouri, loved it, got it accepted into Pepperdine University in Malibu. So nice. I went to college there, graduated from Pepperdine. And, in those years, we didn't have as many fires as they have out in Malibu.
So sad, right?
Yeah, so sad. But I always like the whole Pepperdine angle. You go out there, you go to school, and they're like, man, I can't focus. There's this beach right there. And the view, there was a view of the ocean from the library. Not fair. Like, how am I going to focus? But yeah, that had a really good run at Pepperdine, and then graduated, and then went and worked for like MTV, worked for the manager of KISS, did a lot of different kind of industry jobs, and then landed at an ad agency where I helped procure some really big clients for the agency, like Toyota and Lexus, and
wow,
an agency. And then I switched over to the media publishing side, and I started a media company with a group of family offices, and we started buying other media companies, and eventually we bought a website from Dr. Phil called Rumor Fix. So the tagline was that TMZ would put out the rumors, Rumor Fix would fix them. This was a segment of the Dr. Phil TV show that was, CBS, and it was a really, in those years, a pretty well-known celebrity website and celebrity kind of curator on social media. And then after we bought that, eventually we sold that as well as a bunch of other sites to the Maker Studios founders. And then I went and worked for the founders of Maker Studios and helped with their company Zealot, became a consultant to big media companies like the LA Times, Tribune, Investors Business Daily. And then eventually I started my own investment firm called Next Management Partners. And we started going out buying media properties, and our firm acquired Spin Magazine from Billboard in 2020. And we've had a great run with Spin, and we brought the founder back. And
wow.
I think, it's been a really incredible journey with Spin. But yeah, that's kind of the origin story. Just, grew up in kind of this LA media ecosystem, starting with MTV all the way to the world of online media, and it's been a really good run.
I love it. So getting into Spin, Spin's iconic. It's as well known as anything in the kind of traditional print music industry, probably up there with Billboard and the rest of them. Yeah. What was it that you saw in Spin And if my memory serves me correct, you acquired it out of Balance, right? Out of the holding company that owned Billboard and some of the other like kind of in and around like B2B and music publishing. Is that right?
Correct. We acquired Spin from Billboard.
Oh,
And
Billboard. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, Billboard was owned by VLC and this holdco Todd Bowley Group. So we acquired Spin from Billboard, and the really what I think I saw in it is, one, I grew up reading Spin, so I always was fond of Spin as a publication and the editorial voice, and the Spin was always more fun and more irreverent than other things I saw out there. Also, I love that people were discovering new artists through Spin even before the days of Spotify. Even now, algorithms tell you who to go listen to, but there's a whole place, I think, for music journalism and tastemakers that give some of the song and artist recommendations more texture, more, hey, what's this? What's like, there's a nuance to it, I think, beyond the algorithm. That's probably for a different question on this podcast. But basically, what I saw in Spin was one of a kind brand, had been around for 40 years. This is our 40th anniversary, actually.
Wow.
I really liked what the founder had done with it, even though he had sold it. I mean, after we bought it, I called the founder and said, hey, do you want to come back to Spin? And he agreed to come back. So Bob Guccione, the legendary founder of Spin, the Bob Guccione Jr., came back into the fold in 2020. So I think it was just, I saw that it was special, had a reason to exist beyond what Billboard was able to do with it. And then I think I saw too that Spin had a lot of trust and authority with music fans. And I thought we could leverage that trust and that authority. And that's meaning more than ever in this age of AI. So
what do you think Billboard was doing wrong, and why weren't they giving it the right attention? Why do you think it became something that they were willing to let off the balance sheet?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting. I've been involved in M&A for 10, 15 years of my career. It's very easy to say that the seller, Billboard, or any seller, did these 10 things wrong. It's like, have you ever watched that show Bar Rescue with John Tapper?
Yeah.
Like, there isn't a bar he can't fix. Like, you could have the most profitable bar in the world, he'll find something wrong with it.
Yeah,
so
there's always ways to improve, essentially.
Exactly. There's always ways to improve. So I'm not saying that, I'm not criticizing the people that ran Spin under Billboard at all, because sometimes people, I'm on podcasts and people, I'm not knocking anybody.
Yeah, no, I'm not looking for you to do any drama, but I think, you have a special knack for making publishers profitable and running them lean. And I think, that's what I wanted to know is, like, where was the fat for Jimmy Hutcheson to get under the hood and like start making it a real business again?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the biggest was that Billboard and the parent company it was a pretty large organization. And I think Spin was a bit of an orphaned asset inside of Billboard. Full staff running it, great guys. Matt Medved was the editor in chief, Billie Eilish on the cover, like full, really good guy. Like, he ran Billboard Dance. Like, they were putting people into Spin that knew what they were doing. But I think on different teams were like siphoning off clients. Like, there'd be a client wanting to work with Spin and Billboard, and then it would go to Billboard. Like, just some nuanced stuff that's like a little bit you're cannibalizing, each brand's cannibalizing itself, and Billboard is a more B2B brand, but that's not how it's always seen. So I think one thing that I saw right away is that Spin didn't have a TikTok, right?
Wow.
So, like, low hanging fruit, we got the @Spin name on TikTok, which is really valuable, and worked with TikTok on that. And we launched our TikTok, and now Spin has almost as many followers as Rolling Stone on TikTok. And
holy shit,
we're close to like 1 million. So
that's amazing.
Very engaging, and we have a niche, and we have authority and trust on platforms like that. So that was kind of social media. I think on the side of like partnerships and events, the events hadn't been happening. Spin had always put on a legendary party at South by, so we brought those back after COVID eased up. We saw opportunities where there just were places to utilize the brand. Like, there was a licensing deal for headphones. I'm like, well, hey, if we have a licensing deal for headphones, why don't we get more into licensing other products? So we set up a deal with Urban Outfitters, and we have t-shirts and Urban Outfitters. And then recently, just this year, we launched clothing with Aviator Nation.
Wow, no way. That sounds
Spin
like a
merch with
cool
Aviator
collab.
Nation. So what I saw, to answer your question, I think what I saw Billboard doing is they were very focused on editorial and that core product, but the sales, marketing, that side of the business wasn't being invested in. It was more of they were investing more in Billboard. And I think I saw that there were a lot of skill sets that I have that were going to be helpful, like partnerships, like sales, audience development, promotion. We've done a lot over the last 5-6 years that's really helped accelerate Spin as a brand into other types of revenue besides being a magazine, besides being a website. That's where I saw like my skill sets really shining.
Yeah, that's awesome. It feels like publishers need to be lifestyle brands these days with, reasons to care above and beyond just how you interact with the brand and social. Like, how do you interact with it? Like you mentioned, through products. How do you show your fandom in the real world? How do you show up to live events? I wanted to get your comment on the live events piece, because I know you guys have been really bullish and really aggressive in that space. And you guys are throwing amazing parties and amazing performances at places like Art Basel. You and I are kind of quasi collaborating on something up in a mountain town, maybe later this year. A friend of mine, Dan Levitt, posted on Facebook this week. Dan's a manager at a influencer marketing agency that was acquired by Wasserman last year. And Chain Reaction, a really famous small music venue in Anaheim, closed its doors this week. And we also lost the Winston House in Venice Beach recently. I felt like live music was kind of like the revitalization of the music industry for a long time. But now we're starting to hear like some of these independents shutting their doors. Like, are you seeing that as a trend outside of the two examples that I gave? And what do you think's driving that?
Yeah, great question. I think the answer is it depends on the market as far as like in real life, face to face, music experiences. These markets can vary based on demographics. Take these areas that you're talking about. It's really tough to operate a venue in Venice Beach. I've been to one. Like, I love that spot. There's no parking. It's expensive to park. Take that as a first example. Second example, the drinks are really expensive. I think there's probably some macroeconomic factors there. And plus just the area, if there's saturation of venues. So it's very market by market. If I zoom out and we don't just say like, hey, it'd be easy to say, oh, there's too many venues in Venice Beach. Like, I really don't know that for a fact, but just zoom out, go, well, there's a lot of big independent companies, very well financed, that are launching new venues. Like, there's a company listed on the NASDAQ called Venu, VENU. They're opening up like 10 independent amphitheaters that are not owned by Live Nation.
Wow.
They've got a venue in Colorado Springs. They're opening a couple in Texas. There's one opening in Oklahoma. Like, they're in these markets that we probably wouldn't think as much about, but those are big markets and there's a lot of music fans there. And these are like really state-of-the-art venues that Venue is opening, and they're putting really nice restaurants in them and making them whole experiences. So yeah, I think like it's sad when you see like the local spots, especially like a Chain Reaction. Wow, that place has been around forever. You don't want to see that. I mean, I remember during COVID, NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, launched a fund to help those venues, like 930 Club, Tip Tina's, all these famous venues. They launched a fund to help them basically stay in business in conjunction with another group. And that whole like ecosystem really helped sustain venues during COVID. So now we're in this post-COVID world. Live music came back in a big way. I think there's just everything's self-correcting. Like, there were probably too many festivals, and like that caused some festivals to go away, and like the Pitchfork Festival is no longer around. But then I saw yesterday this really interesting, really cool lineup. This festival in Minnesota called Minnesota Yacht Club that C3 is doing, that popped up. That's a brand new festival. and that's because that the market didn't have that, so it was like underserved. But maybe there's too many venues now down by Chain Reaction. I know I'm kind of bouncing between like a festival and a
Oh, I
venue.
love it. I mean, I think
There's
you're
too much out there. Like there's too many festivals, too many venues. They're gonna self-correct, the ones that will go away that don't rise to the top. But when they have these brand names and have that brand equity, like Troubadour, Whiskey A Go, like those are institutions. You hope
yeah, they're
those
not going anywhere. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I mean, there's like it's like, especially in California, especially in LA, like clubs, nightclubs have to like tear down and rename themselves and reinvent in order to stay popular. And then, the other component is young people aren't drinking as much and they're not going out and partying as much, but they still love music. They love to go to music.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, and then like you even hear about like Coachella isn't as popular as it used to be, but then there are these new up and coming festivals. It's kind of like it's kind of a little bit tied maybe to like flavor of the month and like, what's new, what's cool, what's hip, and what's, looked at as like becoming sold out or too big or too corporate as well, probably.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely a factor. And I think like you brought up the point about young people not drinking as much. There's alternatives to alcohol. Like the Athletic Beer Company has a alcohol-free beer that's become popular. That's a big company now. But if you're a bar that mostly lets the bands take like the door and then you're taking alcohol, but there is no alcohol to sell, hence venues may not stick around quite as long. And I think young people do want to go out for live experiences, and it's really just a market by market factor. Also, too, it's there's you want to diversify your revenue to as many other avenues as you can. Like when you open up a venue, you want to build reputation with your customers, and you want to build a brand name. And who doesn't want to be like a Roxy or Viper Room? I mean, these are like iconic. Chain Reaction. Like there's just in these markets, there's these like institutions, and you hope that they stay because they have so much history. And everyone remembers when they were a teenager or younger going to shows, and you got to get an X on your hand because you're not 21 or whatever, and like you want that to happen. You want to find new music by going out and experiencing it in these iconic venues.
Could you ever see a spin venue?
Yeah, we've talked about it. We've been approached about spin music venues. Yeah, and there's track record of that happening in publishing. Surfer Magazine has a surfer bar in Florida, and it's Surfer the Magazine with all the photography. I think there might be one down by San Diego too. So yeah, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, let's talk about print. I forgive me for not knowing this, but do you guys still issue a print magazine, or are you 100% digital now?
Yeah, we went back into print about
Nice.
a year and a half ago. Print had stopped in 2012, and we went online only. And then we had some calls from some record stores, cool, trendy bookstores. People wanted the magazine to come back. So it started off as let's just distribute this to kind of the cool kids buying vinyl. And then Barnes & Noble called. They wanted it. Hudson News. So we're in all the airports, all the Barnes & Nobles. So we're back out as like full print distribution with big artists on the covers, Chance the Rapper, Rufus the Soul, artists that we really have our eye on that have, new music that's coming out. And it's been great being back in print.
Yeah, well, I'll plug Lost In real quick. Premium print product. We get a lot of meetings because of this. It's a really great leave behind. It's a really great, in real life business card. And I keep hearing. Yeah, do it. Oh, that's beautiful, man. That's a great looking book. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think like most industries, I think what happened with print is they became so thick with ads. People are like, fuck this, and they're like, they were done with it. But now there's this new kind of like digital detox culture. Like people want to read books. People want to touch grass. They want to like leave their phone. They want to leave their phone at home and take a Lost In guide to the park, or a Spin Magazine guide to the coffee, Spin Magazine issue to the coffee store, and just like unplug from the virtual world and just like immerse themselves in their favorite topics and their favorite genres. So really happy to hear that you guys are back in what I'm calling the premium print ecosystem. How often do you guys publish the print version?
Yeah, thanks. We are quarterly.
Okay, quarterly. Awesome. So once a quarter. Okay, cool. So we started to talk about events a little bit, in regards to the venue strategies, but publishers and people wanting to touch a brand in the real world, experience a brand in the real world has become a really important component of the publishing world. We're doing live events at Lost In, whether it is guidebook launches for our partners, or we have this ongoing series called Supper Club where our VIP members get to come out to these really cool parties. We do a yacht series where people get to go out on a boat in LA for the summer. Tell us about some of the ways that Spin is meeting consumers in the real world at things that you do, like at Art Basel or at South by or at Sundance. I know live events and performances are a big part of your guys' strategy. So can you tell me a little bit about that and how important it is to the business?
Yeah, definitely. I think events have become so important, and you're right. Like people want to meet in real life. There's digital detox. There's all of that, and that's I think a big part of this for us is to have a reason for the events, whether it's the talent, the curation. People love music; it brings people together, and so I think with Spin, we've always been about artist discovery. So it's also highlighting artists you haven't heard of yet, but should know
Mm.
about. And there's a big curation element. So, for example, we just had our big 40th anniversary blowout event at Art Basel back about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we had Clips as the headliner, CeeLo Green. We had a bunch of up and comers as well. TuneCore, one of our sponsors, brought one of their artists who we had also had our eye on, and they opened for CeeLo and Clips. So half the action, I think, is getting there early, looking at artists you haven't seen before. But then, of course, like Clips has been nominated for how many Grammys, and it's their first album in 16 years. Like, it was such a cool event. It was on the beach in Miami in the Scope tent, which Scope is like one of the hot Art Basel tents, and it was fantastic. The sponsors were happy, the attendees were happy, the artists were happy. These are events where we shoot lots of content, and we have a lot of opportunities to help highlight brands and to make the events really have that cool factor. And then you take events that we do throughout the year that are our own kind of stand-up events. We put on salons with artists, with like what you're talking about with Lost In. We do those with some pretty big artists with brands, and we have kind of an invite list. We do some screenings. We do showcases at festivals like South by Southwest. There's all kinds of places that Spin is showing up, and it's really about highlighting artists and being like the artist advocate, and then showing the listeners, the readers, the audience something outside their algorithm. Like, whoa, what? I just found out about something that wasn't part of the Spotify algo. Cool. Or maybe you found an artist you really like on Spotify because of the algo, and then you go, I want to know more about that artist. Like, how did they get their start? Why did they write the music like this? Like, why, what's going on here? And then Spin can give you that texture, right? And I think part of that texture and that is being at an actual event itself to see them play live and to maybe see what critics say about them, like Spin.
Yeah, I love that.
Huge, yeah.
Uh, so, do you guys have a label?
Correct. We launched a record label with Virgin a couple of years ago.
Wow. So how's that going?
It's going really well. It was in collaboration with Randy Jackson and his company, and we've got some up and coming artists on the label, and then one pretty big artist, All American Rejects. We released a single with them, and that did really well. They All American Rejects are interesting. They did these like house parties, and they blew up on TikTok, and I think we captured a moment with them, and that the song did really well. So I feel like the label is also about trying to be the champion of artists and help them and support them and market them.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about the music industry in general for a minute. It's becoming easier and easier. I won't call it easy, but we've had some anomalies in recent times where a virtually unknown artist drops a song, like there was the Rich Men of Richmond kind of trend, like I think that was maybe like a year or two ago, where like this guy just drops a song that hits cultural zeitgeist. It kind of became like a political situation too, you know, during an election year, for better or for worse. And I don't think the artist really wanted that to happen, but he became like the most famous guy on earth, you know, for a period of time. Like he's done multiple appearances on Joe Rogan now. And this is a guy who literally just like created a song and put it up, and, you know, it just went like wildfire. So, do you have any commentary on kind of the current state of, you know, the music industry, and like how important are the labels, and, you know, what do you think about independent, you know, artists kind of making music and building their platforms on their own and kind of trying to DIY it? Like what is your kind of, like, if you could give a aspiring musician advice today, like what would you tell them to do, and what would be the route that you would tell them to do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's such a big question. We talk about this some in Spin, and you know, I can address this. I think, and when I say we're like the champion of artists, we're also critics. Like, we will say that we don't like something, and we'll tell you why, and then the publicist will call and say, "Why'd you say that?" It's like, we don't work for you. We're not your like, for lack of a better term, we're Switzerland, and we're trying to give a critical take on something. So if we say we like it, the readers respond. And if we say we don't like it, the readers respond. But we don't work at, like, we're not a marketing agency for an artist. So that's also the balance we have, is like, we want to be in the corner of supporting artists, but we're also not on their salaries paying for
you're not a shill.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you know, we want to have good relationships with people, and we want to talk to people and hear out, like, well, hey, we didn't agree with that review. We're like, okay, well, it's just one person's opinion. I could go hire another writer who might have a different opinion. Like,
totally.
just go, like, there's just, you know, don't get too upset about it. It's gonna be okay. I feel like, if asking us as kind of a company of journalists, like, we sort of see it as an artist is not necessarily an influencer. The labels and everyone's following what's happening on TikTok. They're not leading. It used to be they would lead, like they'd go find the artist, and then, you know, they would market them. Well, now the artists put things out there, like you mentioned, and then the labels find them on TikTok, on YouTube, etc. And there's some labels that probably find them before they blow up on TikTok. Of course, like, that happens. But generally speaking, I think a lot of the labels are looking to de-risk their investments as much as possible. So, hey, artists, let's see your numbers on social media. Well, artists aren't necessarily marketers. Artists aren't necessarily influencers. So that's one thing we've been telling artists around Spin, and telling friends, and, you know, you don't have to necessarily have all of that figured out. Let your talent speak for itself. You know, let your talent bubble up in the algorithm and rise to the top. And I think today's music industry, the challenge is that you still do have people who go, well, you don't need to be on a label. You don't need. Correct. But maybe after you've had like success and you can finance all this, you want a label for one reason: resources, capital, marketers, advice. Yeah, put it out on, put your song out, work with TuneCore, work with who, like, great, like, that's awesome. But eventually, you know, you need a team, and you need help, and you need like a manager, and a this and a that. I'm not saying you shouldn't kind of grow organically with just your friends and your fan base. Sure, do that. But eventually, like, not only, like, all the costs have come down to cut an album and to put out a quality product. Like, that cost has come way down. I'm talking about like the marketing, and like, maybe you want to, you know, boost yourself on Instagram, or maybe you want to run some ad campaigns to promote your music, or you want to reach out to bloggers or influencers and have them review your music. I just think now there is this DIY thing going, and then you can only do so much DIY. Eventually, you do need capital, you need resources, you need to go on tour. That hasn't changed about music. I think what's changed is just the artist having the direct relationship with the fans. But you still, now it's so easy. You get lost in a sea of, YouTube artists and TikTok artists, and you're like, whoa, this all is interesting, but how do you set yourself out from the crowd? And like, if you're an artist, right, you're not necessarily a marketer, you're not necessarily an influencer. Like, those are kind of two different things. Like, I see, people doing makeup tutorials on, those are influencers. Like, here's the best makeup, like, that's an influencer. An artist, like, they have a talent, like they play piano, they do, like, there's a talent there. And I'm not saying the makeup tutorials aren't a talent, but that's a different type of media than music. So music does require talent. So
Yeah, I think that's a great, diplomatic approach. And I think it, I think it satisfies all stakeholders, right? Like
yeah,
well, everybody has to DIY until you get discovered now, right? So you can't
yeah,
be like, you can't be just in a bar in Wyoming and hope to get discovered like the good old days, I don't think, or like some traveling A&R man sees you in a little like pub or something like that. So you have to at least be putting your stuff out on social. But yeah, I agree with you. You get to a point where, you got to kind of like step it up and like join the big boys, I suppose, for lack of a better word. All
yeah.
right, let's talk a little bit about how you guys team up with brands. So obviously, music lends itself, especially like how deep you guys go into music, lends itself to a whole host of endemics. Obviously, working with the record labels, you have all the music instrument creators, like the people who showcase at places like NAMM. You have adjacencies to music. But the reality is, everybody interacts with music. Everybody loves music. Everybody touches and feels music. So, really, every brand has a way into music. Talk about first how you work with endemics, and then we'll get into the non endemic discussion.
Sure. Yeah. I think, working with brands has always been something Spin's done since 1985. We've, always been a champion of collaborations with brands, and they really are collaborations. It's got to be a win-win. And it's the example with endemics would probably be like, guitar companies like Gibson and Fender, the record labels, headphone companies. I think yeah, exactly. So we've had a good relationship with brands like Bose. So take that for example. We created a original content series, branded content with Bose, and it was called Decades of Sound. And we conceptualized, wrote, created, produced a video series with for Bose called Decades of Sound, and it was all about going back in time to the anniversaries of some of the most iconic albums in music, like Cypress Hill's first album, Blur. We've worked with a lot of different artists, and that series was really product integration into video content, and it was also doing professional photography, video, etc., to highlight some of the Bose products. But more than that, it was about the storytelling and about really highlighting what Bose stands for, and then distributing that through media. And so we had big media campaign, and then we also did events with Bose. So these were like underplays, like big artists like Cypress Hill. We had play in a 200-person venue in Hollywood. Like it was just really cool. So I think that branded content really resonates with brands, and it's a good example of an endemic sponsor.
Yeah, I love it. And then when we talk about non endemics, every brand uses music in its commercials. Every brand, there was a lot of talk for a long time about like, what's your sonic ID, right? Like brands needed to have a sound or a soundtrack in order to like go along with their brand. But really, the reality is almost any brand can work in and around the music space or with artists and musicians. But any great examples of how you guys have brought in a non-endemic brand to life that maybe didn't have the confidence to play in the space, but you guys created an interesting strategy or creative insight that allowed them to come into the space with confidence?
Yeah, I think there's several good examples. They've played in the space a lot, but we worked with Diageo and some of their brands like Kettle One, et cetera, to create an event series at South by Southwest, and I think we called it 7 Worlds. So there were 7 different Diageo brands, and we were able to highlight those brands at the event, created a showcase with new artists, and created content for Diageo. So that was, in the live event space. There's also been some really amazing nonprofits that we've helped as well. We worked with this group called the Phoenix, which is like AA meets CrossFit, and they help people entering addiction recovery. And we've put on events with them with influential artists like Machine Gun Kelly and Marcus King and Killer Mike. And there's been a number of what we call salon events and doing what we call crosswalking, where we try to introduce brands to artists and see if there is a collaboration opportunity. And that's been really interesting because you get to go out and search for artists that you think would resonate well with the brand, and which brand would resonate well with the artist. And then making that introduction feels like you're creating a quasi marriage of sorts. Like they're not necessarily going and becoming like the full blown spokesperson, like who was it, William Shatner with Priceline or whatever.
Yeah.
That in depth, but it's interesting to see.
It's what do you call an implied endorsement, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the artists are, of course, being paid, and that's all like disclosed. But it's about creating a relationship that is somewhat organic, where the artist truly, genuinely likes the brand, and that's what we've been able to help some of these brands like the Phoenix do, and Diageo and Bose and others.
Yeah, you should go after these guys. I don't know if you would work with these guys, but these are Sesh nicotine pouches. Their investors are Post Malone and Jelly Roll and a bunch of musicians based out of Austin. So, it's like, sometimes you don't want to talk about a nicotine brand, but I like the idea that these pouches are helping people get off cigarettes and vaping, which I think is the more harmful side of nicotine.
Yeah.
And, they created a organic version that doesn't mess with your mouth pH, and all their investors are famous musicians. So.
Wow. You were a great brand ambassador yourself, Dylan. I mean,
they sent me a box of them. I saw them up in the corner, and I was like, I should probably, suggest these guys.
I see them up there now. No, thanks for telling us. Yeah, that sounds cool. I'm going to check it out. Check it out
for sure.
On my team. Yeah.
All right. So I think we've spent a nice chunk on spin. I want to get down to Jimmy, the operator, as you think about like how you continue to grow your investment bank and you start to acquire additional publishers, and just your take generally on the publishing industry at large. So, we've seen some major tectonic shifts in the publishing space over the last, let's say, definitely the last 2 years, but probably the last 5 years. Brands that were once the darlings of the industry, like Vice or Tastemade or BuzzFeed, have either almost disappeared or gotten acquired and rolled into other business models. How do you think media companies need to evolve to stay relevant, and how do publishers continue to operate in this challenging environment? Because you seem to be doing great with Spin, but there's a lot of stories about companies that are not doing so great.
Correct. Yeah, it's a bloodbath out there, I think. A lot of publishers, a lot of media. Yeah. Well, yeah, we're not an investment bank. We're like an investment firm. So we invest in businesses. We buy companies. The company's called Next Management Partners. And we, for example, we bought Spin from Billboard. So yeah, like right on. I mean, I think AI, that is like the answer to your question. That how are publishers going to deal specifically with AI? And that involves traffic loss. If all the users eventually use ChatGPT and Claude and all these others to do searches, they're not searching on Google. Well, where's your search traffic? We all have followed what's happened with publishers who relied too much on Facebook. So my philosophy is basically don't build your business on rented land. If you're waiting on free Google traffic, that's not exactly the best business model. I think that publishers have to shift into the mindset of paid marketing and email and like owning your audience like you used to. Like when you were on a magazine rack, like you paid for an end cap so people would buy more of your magazine, right? I mean, that's what's kind of what it's come to now is from a business investing standpoint, these are assets that are like now, yeah, I'm moving my brain over to like the business side. So they're assets that are not like looked favorably upon by a lot of the investment community. So you're having to show what you're going to do in the midst of AI, which is diversify against it, partner with it for maybe some cost efficiencies. We're doing even some licensing in the AI world. And then a lot of this, what I call somewhat idiot proof your company events. Duh. Like we've been talking about events a lot with Lost In. You're saying you guys do these dinners and events and spins throwing concerts and you media has always done that. It's just now you have to do more of it and you have to have more newsletter subscribers, more paid. Like we have a subscription product for our print magazine. I think that the investment thesis now is like which brands have authority and trust. Those brands are more valuable. Take every category of content in the world, whether it's sports, music, architecture, design, whatever. There's always like a couple of top brands in every category. In music, I would argue like Rolling Stone and Spin. And sports, and then like some, by the way, some YouTubers, the Needle Drop, Anthony Fontano, the dude's hilarious. He would be up there because like he's got a great following and he's got an opinion and it's like it's just he's got a brand, right? And then in sports, same thing. You've got like ESPN Sports Illustrated, sure, but you've got The Athletic now owned by the New York Times. You've got Barstool. You've got in every vertical. In travel, you have Lost In and a bunch of others. So I think every category has brands that have created brand equity and trust and authority, and those brands need to continue to lean into that and build the brand power of what they own, build up the equity in that trust, and that makes you more valuable for investment.
Is there a category that you would really love to go in next?
Well, I always like to think that if I'm going to go into a category, I'd like it to be somewhat underserved, and that's tricky now because that can change instantly with social media. But you can't monetize and go as in depth on social media as you can with, say, like the written word or like a really good long form video. So I don't have anything specific in terms of categories. Plus, I'm somewhat keeping my cards close to my chest that people who listen to this then go out there like badminton.
You don't want to show anybody where the breadcrumbs are.
Yeah, exactly. Like these badminton websites are the next thing, and then someone goes off and buys all of them. Like, man, I shouldn't have said that on Dylan's podcast. Yeah, I think there's like some valuable niche players out there that are underserved where there's not as much out there in media, but right now it is a bit of a buyer's market for publishers. We also invest and acquire IP, so think IP libraries, brands, that type of thing, and we're broadening our thesis a little bit because we're really good at operating. Like we're operators who also acquire, so we call ourselves like strategic financial buyers, and we know the space really well, and we're well backed, well financed, so it's a great position to be in, and we really like to get our hands dirty with the companies we buy.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about creators. You've talked a little bit about how the difference between creators and artists. Where do creators fit into the publishing landscape these days? Because in some ways, every creator is a competitor to publishers. We're all fighting for attention. But at Lost In, we've signed 38 creators as contributors, and they don't just come in and do a one-off for us. They work with us for an entire year, and we get access to their entire library, so we can ingest their content and feed our social following when they drop and become trendy. So, and then the other thing is like a lot of creators have tried to launch their own .coms, or you've had these companies that have tried to launch .com businesses for creators. Where do you see publishers collaborating in the creator ecosystem in a way that rises all boats?
Yeah, great question. I mean, probably at the top of my list is what you're doing with Lost In, that type of model where a media company partners with contributors who are actually creators. And I'm talking, video, it could be a Substack newsletter, it could be any type of creator. And then the win for Lost In is that you have a network of content creators. And then I think what Lost In offers to the creator is sales and sponsorships. So I think media companies, like an obvious best practice, and this has been going on since the days of multi-channel networks on YouTube and others, you basically, media companies aggregate a bunch of creators and then go to brands and help sell sponsorships. That's kind of creator publisher 101. I think that's like the baseline. I think where it gets more interesting is access. Like with Spin, we have creators that work with us. Well, we have access to Lollapalooza or whatever festival. We have access to the artists themselves. That's something I think we have to offer because we have a brand name that they know and trust. And sometimes the creators don't have that, so they're able to leverage some of our access to then go in and broaden what they do. And then I think where we often see what we see happen is that we found creators very early who were very good at what they do, and they get scooped up by big media company. And that, I have examples, I'm not going to go into them, but we've discovered some talent over the years, and those talent get gobbled up by big multinational company. And yeah, without getting into all the details, I think that's what Spin's always been good at. We discover someone like a creator really early who's really good, and that's great. Like, it's the highest compliment when they go off and they're really successful. And so I think in our world, it looks like MTV VJs, like Downtown Julie Brown, Kurt Loder, or whatever from the 90s. Now that's an Instagram creator, that's a music critic on YouTube, like Anthony Fontano. Some of these people have massive followings. So I think as far as the inverse, so a creator trying to build a website, and like, I've seen a lot of them do that. It's just a different business. I mean, and same with when Spin launched, like, we already had Spin as a brand. So when we launched, say, on TikTok 6 years ago, that was a lift, but it wasn't a giant lift because we had brand recognition in the marketplace. Whereas like some of these creators, like, how are you going to get traffic to your .com? Like, your whole business is on YouTube. It's smart though. You want to diversify your revenue. But it's a tricky dance to do. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is you've got to provide value to the readers and the listeners and your audience. Like, the audience comes first, and you have to provide to them what they're looking for. And some of the creators, especially in music, there can be some like one trick ponies. Like, it's a shtick, and the shtick is the specific thing. And if they're not doing that thing, it doesn't work. That's not actually a business. That's called a hobby.
Good point, man. Well, that's a good take. Well, Jimmy, I think that's probably a good spot for us to call it. This has been awesome, man. I'm always excited to hear what you're doing and get some pearls of wisdom, because you're one of the more strategic operators that I've met over my career, and you really know what you're doing. So I appreciate you coming on and giving the audience some insights. So where would you like to send people if they want to learn more about Spin or connect with you directly?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Dylan. Yeah, they can connect with us on spin.com, nextmanagementpartners.com. And then if, there's some friends of Dylan that need to get a hold of me, you can write to Dylan and then he'll forward them on.
I'll filter the good ones.
If needed. I mean, I didn't know I needed to give out my cell phone number, but I feel like there's also just, if like, contact at spin.com, contact at spin.com. It's a good way to get a hold of us. But yeah, I'm always an open door. I love having conversations with folks, and especially friends of Dylan. So no, thanks for having me, Dylan.
Yeah, my pleasure. So for all of you who are watching at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. If you're listening, an honest review on whatever podcast platform you happen to be listening is how we find a larger organic audience. So please give us a review. And last but not least, if there's an artist out there, a marketer who wants to get into the music space, or maybe somebody from the publishing world who you think would benefit from the conversation that I had with Jimmy today, don't forget to share the show, and happy holidays. Thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Thanks for having me.
See you soon.